I am Harold, 67 years old, and I never imagined my own daughter would try to orchestrate my public humiliation. 10 days before Thanksgiving, I accidentally discovered Amanda's text messages, planning to expose my most painful failures at our family dinner. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. What she never expected was that her cruel plan would awaken something in me I had forgotten existed, my self-respect and the courage to stand up for myself. Before I tell you how I transformed this heartbreaking situation into a moment of dignity that changed everything, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how a father turns the tables when his own child tries to tear him down in front of everyone he loves. I spent 43 years working as a high school history teacher in a small town just outside of Portland. Teaching was never the path to wealth, but it gave me purpose and community. My wife Elaine and I raised our two children, Amanda and Michael, in a modest 3-bedroom home on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of orange and red every fall. Elaine worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and between our two salaries, we managed to provide a comfortable life for our family. We were never wealthy, but we never went without necessities. Vacations were camping trips to national parks rather than international flights. Christmas presents were thoughtful but not extravagant. Our children had what they needed, even if they sometimes complained about not having everything they wanted. Amanda was always the more ambitious of our two children. Even in elementary school, she displayed a fierce determination that both impressed and occasionally concerned us. Where Michael was content with B grades and playing baseball with neighborhood friends, Amanda competed for every academic honor and leadership position available. She maintained a perfect GPA, became student body president, and earned a prestigious scholarship to an Ivy League university. I remember the day her acceptance letter arrived. Amanda screamed with joy, jumping up and down in our kitchen while clutching the envelope. Elaine and I were bursting with pride even as we privately worried about the additional expenses that would come with sending our daughter across the country to an elite school. We remortgaged our home to help cover what her scholarship did, not believing it was an investment in her future. Michael took a different path. After high school, he attended community college while working part-time at a local auto shop. He eventually earned an associate degree in automotive technology and built a stable career as a mechanic. He married his high school sweetheart, Sarah, and they settled just 30 minutes away from us with their two children, our grandchildren, Emily and Jason. Amanda thrived in the competitive university environment. She majored in economics with a minor in political science, graduated with honors, and immediately landed a position at a prestigious consulting firm in New York City. Her starting salary was nearly triple what I made after 4 decades of teaching. Within 5 years, she had climbed to a management position, bought a luxury condo in Manhattan, and cultivated a social circle of similarly successful professionals. As Amanda's star rose, our relationship gradually changed. Her visits home became less frequent and shorter in duration. When she did return, she seemed increasingly uncomfortable with our modest lifestyle. She would make subtle comments about our outdated furniture, my aging Toyota, or Elaine's home cooking, compared to the gourmet restaurants she frequented in New York. I still remember the Christmas when Amanda brought her then-boyfriend Trevor to meet us. He was an investment banker with an Ivy League pedigree similar to hers. Throughout the visit, I noticed him exchanging glances with Amanda whenever I expressed an opinion about politics or current events. Later, I overheard him telling her, "Your dad seems nice, but he is so provincial." Amanda did not defend me. She laughed and agreed. Elaine was always better at maintaining her connection with Amanda. They spoke weekly on the phone, with my wife serving as the bridge between our two worlds. I would occasionally get on the line to exchange pleasantries, but our conversations rarely went deeper than surface updates about work and weather. Over time, I sensed Amanda was embarrassed by me, my middle-class job, my lack of sophistication, my outdated views in her eyes. When Elaine was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 years ago, Amanda flew home immediately. For 3 weeks, she put her high-powered career on pause to help care for her mother. I was grateful for her presence and support during that difficult time. Yet even in our shared grief, there was a distance between us that I could not bridge. Amanda organized hospice care, researched treatment options, and managed Elaine's medications with impressive efficiency. But when I tried to connect emotionally, to share memories of Elaine or express my fear of losing her, Amanda would change the subject to practical matters. Elaine passed away 4 months after her diagnosis. At the funeral, Amanda delivered a polished, eloquent eulogy that moved everyone to tears. I was too overwhelmed to speak publicly, something Amanda later told me she found disappointing. "Mom deserved to hear your voice one last time," she said, not understanding that my silence came from a depth of grief that rendered me speechless, not from lack of love or respect. After Elaine's death, the gap between Amanda and me widened further. She returned to New York and her demanding career, while I rattled around our family home alone. I retired from teaching the following year, finding it difficult to muster enthusiasm for the classroom without Elaine to come home to and share stories about my day. Michael and Sarah tried to include me in their family life, inviting me for weekly Sunday dinners and their children's school events. I treasured these connections, but was always conscious of not imposing too much on their busy lives. My grandson Jason, now 12, shared my love of history and baseball, while 9-year-old Emily had her grandmother's compassion and artistic talent. They became bright spots in my increasingly solitary existence. Meanwhile, Amanda's career continued its meteoric rise. She was promoted to partner at her consulting firm, featured in a business magazine's 40 Under 40 list, and purchased a vacation home in the Hamptons. Our phone calls dwindled to monthly check-ins, usually initiated by me. When I mentioned visiting her in New York, she always had a ready excuse: a business trip, a home renovation, an overwhelming project deadline. 3 years after Elaine's death, I decided to sell our family home. It felt too empty, too full of ghosts. I purchased a small 2-bedroom townhouse in a retirement community surrounded by other people in my age group. The move was practical but emotionally wrenching. Sorting through 40 years of family memories, deciding what to keep and what to discard, all without Elaine's guidance. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done. Amanda flew in for a weekend to help with the move. She hired professional organizers, arranged for donation pickups, and created an efficient system for cataloging family heirlooms. When I became emotional about parting with certain items, Elaine's gardening bench, the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of family meals, Amanda grew impatient. "Dad, you cannot take everything to the new place. It is simply too small," she said. "Besides, these things are just objects. They are not Mom." She was right, of course, but her clinical approach to dismantling our family home felt cold. I kept these thoughts to myself, not wanting to seem ungrateful for her help or create conflict during her brief visit. The following Thanksgiving would be the first major holiday I would host in my new home. With limited space, I planned a smaller gathering than in previous years, just Amanda, Michael and his family, and my brother Bill and his wife Judy. I was nervous about the new setting, but also excited to create fresh traditions in this chapter of my life. In the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, I threw myself into preparations. I practiced new recipes, purchased a smaller dining table that would fit in my new space, and even took a decorating class at the community center to learn how to make my modest home feel festive and welcoming. I wanted everything to be perfect, especially for Amanda, who I knew would be comparing my efforts to the upscale Thanksgivings she had become accustomed to in New York. What I did not know was that Amanda had plans of her own for our family gathering, plans that would bring me to my knees when I discovered them purely by accident, just 10 days before everyone was set to arrive. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning. Amanda had called the night before to confirm her arrival time for Thanksgiving and mentioned she was sending me a package with some specialty items from a gourmet food shop in New York. To elevate the meal, as she put it. The tracking information should be in your email, she had said. Let me know when it arrives. That morning I sat down at my computer to check my email. Technology has never been my strong suit. Elaine used to handle most of our digital correspondence. Since her passing, I had forced myself to become more comfortable with computers and smartphones, but I still struggled occasionally. I logged into my email account and saw several new messages, but none from the shipping company. Thinking perhaps Amanda had texted me the tracking information, instead, I picked up my phone. It was an older model smartphone that Michael had set up for me when I retired, transferring over my contacts and showing me the basics of texting and using apps. As I swiped the screen, I noticed a notification from something called Cloud Backup Complete. I had no idea what this meant, but assumed it was some automatic function Michael had enabled. When I tapped on it, I was confused to find what appeared to be a duplicate of my text messages, but organized differently than in my normal texting app. Trying to navigate back to my regular messages, I accidentally tapped on a conversation that showed my daughter's name but contained messages I had never seen before. It took me a moment to realize I was somehow seeing Amanda's text exchanges with someone named Zoe, messages that were never meant for my eyes. My first instinct was to close the app immediately. This was clearly a technical glitch, an invasion of privacy I never intended. But then a fragment of text caught my eye. My dad will be completely humiliated. My finger froze above the screen. I knew I should respect my daughter's privacy, but that phrase made my heart pound. Telling myself I just needed to make sure she was not in some kind of trouble, I scrolled up to see the context of the conversation. What I read made my hands shake and my stomach turn. Amanda was texting with her friend Zoe about her upcoming visit for Thanksgiving, and the exchange was devastating. Zoe: so you are really going back to Portland for Thanksgiving? What about Trevor's family thing in the Hamptons? Amanda: have to make an appearance at Dad's this year. Michael is getting suspicious about why I always have conflicts. Plus Dad is having it at his sad little retirement villa, so it will be mercifully short. Zoe: sounds grim. At least the food will be good. Amanda: doubtful. But I am bringing Scott. Zoe: the photographer. Why would you subject him to family Thanksgiving? Amanda: content. I am thinking of starting that Boomer Fails series we talked about for the social channel. Dad is the perfect subject. He is like a walking time capsule of outdated opinions and clueless privilege. Scott can discreetly capture it all, and I will do a voiceover breaking down all the problematic stuff. It will be both hilarious and educational. Oh, Zoe: OMG, I love it. Your own father as the first subject. Amanda: perfect, right? He will never know. Scott will pretend to just take regular family photos. I have got at least 3 triggering topics guaranteed to make Dad go off. By dessert, my dad will be completely humiliated, and we will have killer content for the channel. The working title is My Problematic Boomer Dad. If it hits, we can make it a holiday series. The conversation continued with Amanda describing how she planned to provoke me into expressing outdated views on several controversial topics, capturing my clueless reactions on video, without my knowledge, then editing the footage to launch a social media series mocking out-of-touch boomers. I sat frozen in my chair, reading and rereading the exchange. Each word felt like a physical blow. My own daughter was planning to secretly record and publicly ridicule me for internet content. The coldness of it, the calculated nature of the betrayal, was almost impossible to comprehend. This was not an impulsive mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a premeditated plan to use me to exploit my trust for her professional gain. More painful than the scheme itself was the contempt evident in her words. Sad little retirement villa. Walking time capsule of outdated opinions. Problematic. These were not the words of a daughter who respected her father, but viewed him differently on certain issues. These were the words of someone who fundamentally looked down on me, who saw me as nothing more than a convenient stereotype to be mocked. I closed the app and set down my phone with trembling hands. Tears welled in my eyes, not just of hurt, but of humiliation. Had I really failed so completely as a father that my own child could see me this way? Was I truly so backward, so worthy of public ridicule? Or had the distance between our worlds grown so vast that Amanda could no longer see me as a full human being, deserving of basic dignity? For hours, I sat in my living room, alternating between crushing sadness and flashes of anger. I considered calling Amanda immediately to confront her, but what would I say? How could I admit I had seen messages not meant for me, and more fundamentally, how could I unhear words that revealed my daughter's true feelings about me? I thought about canceling Thanksgiving entirely. I could claim a sudden illness, spare myself the humiliation of being secretly recorded and mocked. But that would only postpone the inevitable. If Amanda was willing to go to these lengths, once she would likely try again. By evening, my initial shock had hardened into something else, a quiet, resolute determination. I had spent years trying to bridge the gap with my daughter, making excuses for her increasing coldness, blaming myself for our disconnection. But this revelation forced me to see our relationship with painful clarity. I had been so afraid of losing her completely that I had accepted scraps of connection on her terms, compromising my own dignity in the process. No more. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the self-respect I had gradually surrendered over the years. I would not confront Amanda about the texts. That would only lead to defensiveness and denials. Instead, I would prepare for Thanksgiving in a different way than I had planned. If Amanda wanted to expose the real Harold Wilson to the world, I would give her that opportunity, just not in the way she expected. I reached for a notepad and began to write, formulating a plan that would either heal the broken relationship with my daughter or end the pretense once and for all. Either way, I would reclaim my voice and my dignity in the process. The thought was both terrifying and strangely liberating. As I wrote late into the night, I felt Elaine's presence strongly for the first time in years. She had always been the family's moral compass, the one who insisted on honest conversations even when they were difficult. "Speak your truth with love," she would say. That is exactly what I intended to do. With just over a week until Thanksgiving, I threw myself into preparations, though not the kind I had originally planned. Instead of focusing solely on menu planning and table decorations, I embarked on what felt like an archaeological dig through my own life. First, I called my son Michael. "I need your help with something for Thanksgiving," I told him. "But I need you to keep it between us for now." "Sure, Dad. What is going on?" His immediate willingness to help without questions brought a lump to my throat. "I want to put together a sort of family history presentation," I explained, choosing my words carefully. "Photos, videos, mementos from over the years. Could you help me go through the storage boxes in your garage and set up something simple with technology?" "Of course," he said, sounding pleasantly surprised. "That sounds really nice, actually. Emily and Jason would love seeing that stuff." The following day, Michael came over and we drove to his house to sort through the family items I had stored in his garage when I downsized. Boxes of photo albums, home videos converted to DVDs, school projects, and family mementos that I had not had the heart to discard but could not fit in my new home. As we began opening boxes, I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and purpose. Each photograph, each handmade Mother's Day card, each family vacation souvenir told part of our story. Not just my story or Amanda's perception of me, but our collective history as a family. "Dad, look at this," Michael said, pulling out a dusty photo album. "Remember this camping trip when Amanda fell in the lake trying to catch that frog?" The photo showed a soaking wet 10-year-old Amanda, her face a mixture of embarrassment and laughter, as I wrapped her in a towel, both of us smiling widely. I remembered that day clearly, how she had refused to change into dry clothes because she was determined to catch that frog, how proud she had been when she finally succeeded. "She was so stubborn even then," I said, smiling at the memory. "Just like you," Michael replied, nudging my shoulder affectionately. We spent hours sorting through decades of family history, selecting items that told the story of our family, both the highlights and the struggles. I was particularly interested in finding evidence of the values Elaine and I had tried to instill in our children, the sacrifices we had made, and the genuine love that had defined our family despite our imperfections. Michael noticed my focus. "You are being pretty strategic about what you are choosing," he observed. "This is more than just a random walk down memory lane, is not it?" I hesitated, not wanting to share the full truth and potentially create conflict between my children. "Let us just say I want to remind everyone where we came from," I finally answered. "Especially Amanda. I think she has forgotten some important things about our family." Michael nodded slowly. "She has changed a lot since Mom died. Sometimes I barely recognize the sister I grew up with." "People grow and change," I said, trying to be fair despite my hurt. "But it is good to remember your roots, too." With Michael's help, we organized the materials and created a simple digital presentation that could be shown on my small television. He also helped me select and frame several key photographs to display around my townhouse. Before he left, Michael gave me a long hug. "This will be great, Dad. A good reminder of what Thanksgiving is supposed to be about." If only he knew my full intentions. The next phase of my preparation was more personal. I spent an evening writing in a journal, honestly assessing my own shortcomings as a father. Had I been dismissive of Amanda's ambitions? Had I failed to understand her world? Had I indeed expressed outdated views that needed challenging? I forced myself to confront these questions without defensiveness. I realized there was truth in some of Amanda's criticisms, even if her planned method of addressing them was cruel. I had sometimes struggled to understand her fast-paced, achievement-oriented life. I had occasionally made comments about her career choices or lifestyle that probably came across as judgmental rather than concerned. And yes, some of my views had likely failed to evolve with the times. But I had also loved her unconditionally. I had worked extra jobs to help pay for her education. I had supported her dreams even when they took her far from home. And I had never, not once, intentionally humiliated her or treated her as less than the remarkable person she was. The day before Thanksgiving, I received a text from Amanda confirming her arrival with her colleague, Scott. No mention of his real purpose, of course. "Looking forward to seeing the new place," she wrote. "Scott is excited to meet everyone and offered to take some family photos." "Wonderful," I replied, the single word taking all my restraint. "Safe travels." That evening, I set everything up exactly as planned. The photos were displayed strategically throughout my small living room. The digital presentation was tested and ready. I had prepared my remarks, rehearsing them until they felt natural and heartfelt rather than accusatory. I also made one final preparation. On my bedside table, I placed a small voice recorder, the same model I had used for years to record lectures for students who missed class. If Amanda planned to record me without my knowledge, I would ensure I had my own record of what truly transpired. Not for public consumption or revenge, but for my own peace of mind, and if necessary, to protect my integrity. As I laid in bed that final night, anxiety and determination warred within me. I had no idea how the next day would unfold, or what the consequences would be for my relationship with my daughter. But for the first time in years, I felt fully present in my own life, unwilling to be a passive recipient of whatever scraps of respect Amanda deemed to offer. Tomorrow would bring either healing or closure, but either way, I would face it with dignity intact. Thanksgiving morning dawned with clear skies and crisp autumn air. I rose early partly from nerves and partly from habit. After a quick breakfast, I began the final preparations for the meal. I had decided to stick with traditional Thanksgiving dishes rather than trying to impress Amanda with gourmet experiments. This day was about authenticity after all. Michael, Sarah, and the children arrived first, just after 11 in the morning. Emily immediately hugged me tight while Jason proudly presented me with a hand-drawn card featuring a surprisingly detailed turkey wearing what appeared to be my signature reading glasses. "This is wonderful," I told him, genuinely touched. "I will put it right here on the mantel so everyone can see it." Michael and Sarah brought side dishes and immediately jumped in to help with preparations. The easy familiarity of their presence calmed my nerves somewhat. Whatever happened with Amanda today, I had these loving family members who saw me as a whole person worthy of respect. "Dad, you seem a little tense," Sarah observed quietly as we arranged appetizers. "Everything okay?" "Just the usual holiday stress," I assured her. "First Thanksgiving in the new place, you know." She squeezed my arm gently. "It looks great. You have done a wonderful job making this place feel like home." My brother Bill and his wife Judy arrived next, bringing pumpkin pies and warm hugs. Bill, 3 years my senior, had always been my steadfast supporter, especially since Elaine's passing. As we embraced, he whispered, "Looking good, little brother. Elaine would be proud." The doorbell rang precisely at 1:30, the time Amanda had specified she would arrive. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened the door. Amanda stood there looking every inch the successful New York executive, designer coat, perfectly styled hair, the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. Beside her stood a tall, bearded man in his 30s carrying an expensive camera bag and what appeared to be lighting equipment. "Dad," she said, leaning in for our customary brief hug. "This is my colleague Scott Marshall. He is a photographer I work with on various projects. I mentioned he would be taking some family photos today." "Of course," I replied, extending my hand to Scott. "Welcome to my home. Thank you for offering your professional services on a holiday." Scott had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable as he shook my hand. "Happy to do it, sir. Amanda speaks very highly of her family." I wondered if that was true or if he was fully aware of their actual plan for the day. Either way, I ushered them both inside where introductions to the rest of the family followed. I noticed Scott assessing the space, likely planning his recording strategy. Amanda glanced around with barely concealed judgment, taking in the modest furnishings and simple decorations. "Your place is very cozy, Dad," she said, the faint note of condescension not lost on me. "It suits me," I replied simply. "Let me show you around before we eat." As I gave them a brief tour of my small townhouse, I watched Amanda's expression carefully. She nodded politely, but seemed distracted, occasionally exchanging glances with Scott when she thought I was not looking. I could almost see her mentally rehearsing the triggering topics she planned to introduce during dinner. Scott set up his equipment with professional efficiency, positioning his camera and lights in ways that would capture the dining area. "Just going to get some candid family moments," he explained to everyone. "Pretend I am not even here." "Actually," I said, "before we sit down to eat, I have put together a little family retrospective. I thought it would be nice to take a moment to remember what brings us together today." Amanda looked startled. "Dad, we are all pretty hungry, and the food smells great. Maybe we could do that later." "It will only take a few minutes," I insisted gently. "Scott, you might find it interesting too. A little background on the family you will be photographing today." With Michael's help, I dimmed the lights and started the presentation on my television. The first image appeared, a photo of Elaine and me on our wedding day, young and beaming with hope for the future. "For those who do not know our full story," I began. "Elaine and I met in college. I was studying history, and she was in the nursing program. We got married with almost nothing to our names, just a used car, a tiny apartment, and big dreams of making a difference in the world." The slides continued, showing the purchase of our first home, Amanda's birth, followed by Michael's 2 years later. I narrated simply but purposefully, emphasizing the values that had guided our family choices. We never had much money, but we prioritized education, community service, and being there for each other. I explained as photos of school events, family volunteering activities, and holiday celebrations appeared. "Elaine took night shifts for years so she could be home when you kids returned from school. I turned down a department chair position that would have meant moving the family because Amanda was thriving in her high school, and we did not want to disrupt that." I glanced at Amanda, whose expression had shifted from impatience to discomfort. The narrative I was presenting did not align with whatever problematic boomer caricature she had planned to capture. The presentation continued with images of family challenges. Elaine in the hospital during a health scare when the children were teenagers, me grading papers late into the night, while also caring for my aging mother, who had moved in with us briefly before her death. "We made mistakes too," I acknowledged, showing a family vacation where clearly everyone was miserable in the pouring rain. "We were not perfect parents. We sometimes failed to understand what you kids needed or wanted. We had our own blind spots and biases shaped by our generation and experiences." Then came the section focusing specifically on Amanda. Her academic achievements, sports victories, graduation ceremonies. "Amanda always reached for the stars," I said, my voice warm with genuine pride. "When she set her mind to something, nothing could stop her." I showed a photo of Amanda opening her Ivy League acceptance letter, followed by one of Elaine and me standing outside our bank. "This was the day we remortgaged our home to help cover Amanda's college expenses," I explained. "We were in our 50s, starting over financially, but we never questioned whether it was worth it. We believed in her potential." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Amanda shift uncomfortably in her seat. Scott looked increasingly confused by the direction this photo opportunity was taking. The final segment of the presentation focused on Elaine's illness and passing. Photos of her in hospice surrounded by family. The funeral where Amanda had delivered her eloquent eulogy. The family supporting each other through grief. "Elaine was our heart," I said, my voice catching slightly. "When we lost her, each of us lost a piece of ourselves too. We have all been finding our way back to each other since then, sometimes successfully, sometimes not." The last image was a split screen. On one side, a photo of our entire family from Christmas the year before Elaine's diagnosis, all of us laughing together on the couch in ugly holiday sweaters. On the other side, a more recent photo of just Amanda and me from her brief visit to help with my move, standing stiffly side by side in my empty family home, barely touching, barely smiling. "This is where we were," I said, pointing to the first image. "And this is where we are now, at least where Amanda and I are. I turned to face my daughter directly. And I have been trying to understand why. The room fell silent as the presentation ended. I turned the lights back up to see my family's reactions. Michael and Sarah looked emotional, holding hands tightly. Bill was wiping his eyes while Judy nodded in understanding. The children seemed thoughtful, processing this history of their family. Amanda's face had drained of color. Scott looked deeply uncomfortable, his camera forgotten at his side. "Thank you for that touching retrospective, Harold," Judy said, breaking the silence. "What a beautiful tribute to your family journey." "Yes, well," I replied. "I thought it was important to remember where we came from before we move forward with our day." I looked directly at Amanda. "Especially since I understand there are some specific topics you were hoping to discuss during dinner, Amanda." Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "Just that I know you have strong opinions about certain issues, and I want you to feel free to express them," I said evenly. "In fact, Scott, why don't you make sure your camera is recording? I would not want to miss capturing any important family moments or discussions today." Amanda's face shifted from confusion to dawning realization. She glanced at Scott, who was looking increasingly like he wanted to disappear. "Actually," Scott said, setting down his camera, "I just remembered I promised my mother I would call her this afternoon. Would you mind if I stepped outside for a few minutes before we eat?" "Of course not," I replied graciously. "Take all the time you need." As Scott hurried outside, Amanda stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and something else, perhaps the first glimmer of shame. The rest of the family, oblivious to the subtext of what was transpiring, began moving toward the dining room. "Why don't you all start taking seats?" I suggested. "Amanda, could you help me bring out the last few dishes from the kitchen?" Once we were alone in the kitchen, Amanda turned to me, her voice a harsh whisper. "What is going on? How did you know about discussions I wanted to have?" I met her gaze steadily. "I know about the problematic Boomer Dad video series you were planning to launch. I know Scott is here to secretly record me saying outdated things so you can mock me online. I know you think I am an embarrassment, a walking stereotype, someone worthy of public humiliation for the sake of your social media content." Her face went pale. "How could you possibly know that?" "Does it matter?" I asked quietly. "What matters is that you were willing to do it. To use your own father to mock me for views you have never actually tried to understand or discuss with me directly." "Dad, No," I interrupted firmly, but without raising my voice. "For once you are going to listen to me. I am not the caricature you have created in your mind. I am a flawed human being who has made mistakes, who has not always kept up with changing times or language. But I am also the father who supported every dream you ever had, who worked extra jobs to fund your education, who has been trying for years to maintain a connection with you, despite your increasing contempt." Tears welled in her eyes, but whether from being caught or from genuine remorse, I could not tell. "I did not put together that presentation to embarrass you," I continued. "I did it to remind you, and perhaps myself, of who we really are beneath the labels and assumptions, and to make it clear that whatever you had planned for today would not be capturing the real me, but only the straw man you have created to justify your distance." Amanda's shoulders sagged as she leaned against the counter. "How did you find out?" "Technology mishap," I said simply. "But that is not important. What matters is what happens next. We have a choice to make, Amanda. We can either go out there and have an honest Thanksgiving together as a family, disagreements, differences, and all, or you can leave now with Scott and whatever content you think you can salvage. But there will be no secret recording, no public humiliation. Not today, not ever." She looked down at the floor, silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, almost childlike. "I did not think you would ever find out." "Would that have made it okay?" I asked. She had no answer for that. "You are my daughter, and I love you," I said, softening my tone. "That has never changed, even when you stopped seeing me as someone worthy of basic respect. But love without boundaries is not really love at all. So the choice is yours. Stay and begin rebuilding something real with me and your family, or go. But either way, you need to be honest about your intentions." The kitchen timer buzzed, signaling the turkey was ready to be served. Amanda wiped her eyes quickly, professional composure returning. "We should get back out there." "Yes," I agreed. "We should. But first, what is your decision?" She met my eyes for what felt like the first honest look we had shared in years. "I will stay, and I am sorry, Dad. I do not know when I started seeing you as a category instead of a person." It was not a full reckoning, not yet, but it was a start. "Let us just get through dinner," I said. "We can talk more later." As we carried the final dishes to the table, Scott slipped back inside, looking questioningly at Amanda. She gave him a slight shake of her head, and I watched as he subtly began packing away his camera equipment. The meal itself was surprisingly pleasant once the initial tension dissipated. We ate shared stories and even laughed occasionally. Amanda was quieter than usual, but she engaged genuinely with her niece and nephew, asking about their interests and activities with what seemed like sincere curiosity. When dessert was served, Michael raised his glass. "I would like to propose a toast to Dad for bringing us all together in his new home, and for reminding us what family really means." Glasses clinked, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the food or drink. It was the warmth of authenticity, of showing up as my true self, imperfect but worthy of respect, and being seen. After dinner, while the others helped clear the table, Amanda approached me quietly. "Scott needs to head back to the city for another commitment," she said. "But I would like to stay the night, if that offer still stands. I think we have a lot to talk about." I nodded, feeling the first tentative hope that something important had shifted between us. "Your room is ready whenever you are." Scott left with awkward goodbyes, the phantom video project unmentioned by everyone. As the evening wound down and family members departed with leftovers and warm embraces, Amanda and I selves alone in my small living room. "I hardly know where to begin," she said after a long silence. "Perhaps with the truth," I suggested gently. "When did I become someone you stopped seeing as a whole person?" And so began the real Thanksgiving. A difficult, honest conversation, years overdue, with no cameras, no performance, just a father and daughter finding their way back to each other through truth and perhaps eventually forgiveness. The morning after Thanksgiving dawned gray and rainy, matching the subdued but cathartic mood that had settled over my small townhouse. Amanda and I had talked late into the night, our conversation more honest than any we had shared in years. There had been tears on both sides, difficult admissions, and moments when it seemed the gulf between us might be too wide to bridge. But we had persisted, both recognizing that what hung in the balance was not just our relationship, but our individual integrity. I woke to the smell of coffee brewing, something I had not experienced since Elaine's passing. Putting on my robe, I found Amanda in the kitchen, already dressed in casual clothes, rather than her usual designer attire, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "I hope I did not wake you," she said, offering me a mug. "I am an early riser these days. Corporate habit." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the coffee with genuine appreciation. "Did you sleep okay on that old guest bed? I know it is not what you are used to." "Actually, I slept better than I have in months," she admitted. Maybe it was the emotional exhaustion, or maybe She trailed off, looking out the kitchen window at the rain. Maybe it was finally saying things I have needed to say for a long time. We settled at my small kitchen table, the rain pattering against the windows, creating a cocoon of privacy around us. After our marathon conversation the night before this morning felt like an opportunity to process and move forward, rather than continue excavating past hurts. I have been thinking about what you said last night. Amanda began cradling her mug. About how success became my religion after Mom died. I think you were right. I threw myself into work and achievement because it was the only thing that made sense when everything else felt chaotic and painful. I nodded, remembering how I had retreated into solitude after Elaine's death, while Amanda had fled into ambition. Different responses to the same wound. The problem was, she continued, I started judging everything and everyone by those standards. Success influence being on the right side of history, including you. And I failed those metrics. I said not resentfully, but matter-of-factly. By my narrow definition, yes, she acknowledged. But that definition was wrong, or at least incomplete. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. When I look at what you and Mom actually accomplished, raising 2 children who are reasonably functional adults, maintaining a loving marriage for 40 years, positively influencing thousands of students over your career, that is success by any meaningful measure. The acknowledgement warmed me more than the coffee. Thank you for seeing that. I should have seen it all along, she replied. Instead, I let external validation become my whole value system. Likes, followers, professional accolades being seen as progressive and cutting edge. She shook her head ruefully. Until I was willing to humiliate my own father for content. About that, I said carefully. I need to know, how far would it have gone, the video series? Amanda looked down, shame evident in her posture. Honestly, pretty far. We were planning a 6-part series with you as the first episode. The goal was to get at least 100,000 views, enough to attract sponsors for the channel. The casual way she quantified my potential humiliation sent a chill through me, but I pressed on. And you never considered just talking to me about views you found problematic, adult to adult. I told myself I had tried, she said. But looking back, I never really did. I would make snarky comments or roll my eyes when you said something I disagreed with, but I never sat down and had a real conversation with you about why I saw things differently. Because it was easier to dismiss me as a hopeless boomer than to engage with me as a thinking person capable of growth, I suggested. She nodded slowly. And because engaging would have required me to consider that I might not have all the answers either. We sat in silence for a moment, the rain providing a gentle soundtrack to our reconciliation. So what happens now? I finally asked. With the video project, with Scott, with everything. Amanda straightened her shoulders, a glimpse of her professional decisiveness returning. The project is dead. I will tell Scott when I get back to New York. As for everything else, she hesitated. I am not sure. I need to do some serious thinking about the kind of person I want to be, the kind of daughter I want to be, for what it is worth. I offered, I think the person sitting across from me right now is someone I could be proud to call my daughter. Her eyes filled with tears. Even after what I planned to do. What matters is what you choose to do now, I said. We all make mistakes, Amanda. The question is whether we learn from them. After breakfast, we took a walk, despite the drizzling rain, sharing an umbrella as we explored the walking paths around my retirement community. The physical act of walking side by side seemed to make conversation easier, allowing us to discuss lighter topics while still maintaining the new honesty between us. Amanda asked about my daily life, showing genuine interest in my routine, my neighbors, the books I was reading. I inquired about her work, but with curiosity rather than judgment about her ambitions. We were feeling our way toward a new relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation or illusion. When we returned to the townhouse, Amanda checked her phone for the first time since our conversation the night before. "I should probably head back to New York soon," she said reluctantly. "I have some thinking to do and things to address at work." "Of course," I replied, trying not to let disappointment color my tone. "Real life calls." As she packed her overnight bag, I found myself hoping this breakthrough was not just a temporary emotional response that would fade once she returned to her fast-paced life. As if reading my thoughts, Amanda paused in the doorway of the guest room. "Dad, I want you to know that this is not just a Thanksgiving emotion that will disappear when I get back to the city," she said firmly. "What happened between us, what I planned to do, and what you did instead, it has changed something fundamental. I cannot go back to seeing you the way I did before." "I hope not," I said simply. Before leaving, Amanda did something unexpected. She asked to see the family photo albums again, the physical ones we had looked through in the presentation. We sat on the couch together, turning pages slowly, her asking questions about memories I thought she had dismissed as irrelevant. "I remember this," she said, pointing to a photo of herself at about 8 years old, dressed in a science fair outfit, with a volcano project. "You stayed up all night helping me rebuild that volcano after the dog knocked it over. You were so determined to win," I recalled, smiling at the memory. "And you did." "Because you would not let me give up," she said softly. "That is the kind of thing I stopped seeing about you, Dad. The ways you always showed up for me even when it was inconvenient or difficult." When it was finally time for her to leave, our goodbye was different than any we had shared in years. She hugged me tightly, the kind of embrace we had not shared since she was a teenager. "I will call you next week," she promised. "A real conversation, not just a check-in." "I would like that," I replied. As I watched her car pull away, I felt neither the triumph of having won nor the simple relief of having avoided humiliation. Instead, I experienced something more complex and valuable, the quiet satisfaction of having stood up for my dignity while still keeping my heart open to reconciliation. I had not compromised my self-respect or my love for my daughter. Somehow I had found a way to honor both. Back inside, I turned off the voice recorder I had never needed to use and tucked it away in a drawer. The rain had stopped and weak sunlight was breaking through the clouds. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, feeling lighter than I had in years. 3 days later, a package arrived from New York. Inside was a framed photograph I had never seen before. Amanda at her college graduation, looking back over her shoulder at Elaine and me in the audience, our faces shining with pride. Attached was a note in Amanda's handwriting. "I am beginning to see more clearly now. Thank you for not giving up on me. Love, Amanda." It was not a complete healing. That would take more time, more conversations, more mutual effort to understand each other across our differences. But it was a beginning founded on truth rather than performance, on mutual respect rather than obligation. I placed the photograph on my mantle next to the turkey drawing Jason had given me for Thanksgiving. Together they represented something I had almost forgotten. That family at its best sees us fully, flaws and all, and loves us anyway. Not as perfect people, not as projections of who others want us to be, but as the complex, evolving, worthy human beings we truly are. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for your dignity? How did you navigate that difficult balance? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of reclaiming self-respect While keeping your heart open resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family healing and second chances. Share this with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, it is never too late to change the narrative of your relationships as long as you approach them with both courage and compassion.